Hi, I'm Jason Thibault, President and CEO of Davinci Medical and the creator of the Superhuman Protocol. So what is the Superhuman Protocol and what can it do for you? Well, I don't know anything that it won't do for you. Any condition that you're experiencing in your life is most likely your body's inability to restore order, to heal, to regenerate. And that usually happens with poor blood flow, which is caused by inflammation, or you have toxicity, or you just have malnutrition. So really aren't going to go down the nutritional rabbit hole, but we can unlock the blocks. We can remove the impedance, which is causing the body not to perform properly. So if you're having fatigue every day, you feel tired, you're aching, things are sore, peripheral neuropathy, sexual dysfunction, it really doesn't matter. Everything is predominantly a root cause of poor blood flow and inflammation. The body isn't getting the 5 liters of blood to the 11 organ systems. And each one of those 11 organ systems, if they're choked off, they're going to produce symptoms. And then you're going to go to the doctor and they're going to put you on a medication that's going to suppress that symptom, but they didn't really go after why you have that symptom. They just suppress it. That's never going to get you to where you need to be. In fact, it's probably going to slow you down even more, because what's happening is the problem that brought you to the doctor is continuing to get worse. The medication in many cases causes that to actually get worse. The root cause gets worse. You need another medication for a side effect that you're on. So without going down that rabbit hole, I will submit that if you're an athlete, you're going to perform better than ever. You're going to be able to train harder and with greater endurance and and strength. You'll be able to recover much faster. If you're looking to improve your skin, right, remove the fine lines and wrinkles, that's going to go away. Your visual and mental acuity will go through the roof. So if you feel like at around 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon you crash, you'll have a second wind as you're using Superhuman Protocol. You're going to feel the way you're supposed to feel. This isn't creating an artificial sense of euphoria and well-being. This is actually the body starting to feel well again, because you basically opened up the doors that are blocking the healing processes that are occurring in the body. Excuse me. So essentially doing 3 technologies. Let's go ahead and share the screen here. 3 technologies. You may have heard of these: PEMF therapy, pulsed electromagnetic field, exercise with oxygen, and red light therapy. You may have heard of all 3 of these. You may have heard of none of them. They are all steeped in science. PEMF therapy's got dozens of FDA clearances. It got some of its first clearances for non-union bone fractures, meaning you can put a PEMF, wearable PEMF device on a non-union, meaning a bone that broke that's not touching. You can use a wearable device and the bone will actually grow back. Bones are piezoelectric. That means they respond to a magnetic field and they will literally start to grow back. It induces the osteoclast, osteoblast remodeling mechanism. So you can look that up. You can type in PEMF therapy and non-union bone fracture. You'll see that. It's used for a number of things. But when we do PEMF, it's kind of like earthing or grounding. I'm sure you've heard of that. This is walking barefoot on planet Earth. You have a charge from Mother Earth, and you have 60 trillion batteries in the body. We call them cells. How do you charge them, and why do you need to charge them? So let's look at a small prop here. Let's say these are red blood cells. Okay, typically most people's red blood cells are clumped together. We'll see an example of that later. But red blood cells carry oxygen and they carry it to tissues. But if the red blood cells are stuck to each other, oxygen can't get in sufficiently, meaning you become hypoxic, meaning you have less oxygen or fewer oxygen molecules getting to the body. That means you're not able to get energy production up, ATP, adenosine triphosphate. When someone says, I have no energy, Actually, you're full of energy, you're made of energy, and it's misinformation. You have a ton of energy. In fact, if you start doing squats right there in place, start exercising, you do 20 reps of squats, you will do a 6-fold increase of energy production, and then you'll literally walk around with more energy. Energy is called upon. You don't just sit there and say, I have energy. You call upon it when you need it, but you can build it up. It's kind of like revving up your battery and charging your cell phone battery. All you got to do is exercise, and suddenly the charge and the availability of energy is increased. So this is a tip for those that feel sluggish throughout the day. Just stop what you're doing, stand there, and do a few squats. Do 4 sets of 10. So magnetism, oxygen, and light. These are the 3 things that are involved in the Superhuman Protocol. And the reason that we do 3 things is because those 3 things helped create life. The magnetic field on Mother Earth has always been there. Oxygen's always been there, and light's there. Without those 3 life forms, life would not exist. If the sun winks out of the sky tomorrow, we become the Earth becomes a giant ice cube. It takes a couple of years for that to happen, but most things would stop growing, and life would cease to exist. If you cannot breathe for 10 minutes, you're brain dead. 5 minutes, you pass out. PEMF field, if you're blocked from it, and that's capable, that's possible by getting yourself into a Faraday cage. Faraday cage will block Earth's magnetic field. You'll go into defib, heart failure, within 10 to 15 minutes if you do that. So without these 3 things on Mother Earth, you literally will die. Well, if they've all decreased, or that we are having a difficult time getting all 3 of them, doesn't it make sense, if they helped create life, that they are suppressing life? So let's talk about the magnetic field for a second. 4,000 years ago, they estimate that the magnetic field coming from Earth was at 2.5 Gauss. It's now half a Gauss. That's an 80% decline in 4,000 years. Well, what does that really mean? Well, imagine if I told you that your cell phone, starting tomorrow, you could only charge 20% of it. Well, how long is the cell phone going to last? Well, it's going to last 20% of the normal time. Then you've got to recharge it, but it's going to die again very quickly because you can only charge it up to 20%. So that's what's happening with Mother Earth. The magnetic field has declined to such a degree that we're not able to charge the body properly. We're not walking around barefoot to get that charge. You can look this up. It's called earthing or grounding. There's over 20 peer-reviewed studies that support the fact that walking barefoot, doing what's called grounding or earthing, will actually put you in an alkaline state. It'll raise the pH back to normal, restore blood flow to the 11 organ systems, and now each of those organ systems can operate properly. You can restore your health and repair. The body does what it does naturally. So after PEMF, which is a 10-minute session, your blood flow goes back to normal. You'll probably notice that most of the things that you complained about, maybe it was pain, maybe it was mental or visual acuity that you had a problem with, that kind of just melts away. You can do 1 PEMF session in 10 minutes and notice better sleep. Notice that you have greater energy. Notice that something that was bothering you that day doesn't bother you anymore. That's what happens when you turn the pool pump back on. If you turn the pool pump off, the water will become stagnant. You'll have algae. It'll become a cesspool and a breeding ground for God knows what. You turn the pool pump back on, that water gets filtered, it gets cleaned up, and you can go swimming in that water again. Well, PEMF therapy on a daily basis is like keeping the pool pump on. I promise you, you don't do earthing or grounding or do PEMF therapy, your blood will start looking like the pool after the pump has been turned off for a few months. So PEMF therapy can be applied to the eyes, to the ears. We've seen people with tinnitus literally see a complete reversal within a couple months. We've seen people with macular degeneration start to see again. You can wear a pair of goggles with the PEMF signal. You can use a special pen applicator, which will allow you to apply the field to knuckles or digits or specific areas on the body. You can also use the PEMF device with what's called the pillow pad, and you can use the pad on any part of the body. We call that targeting. Target application lets you go after a certain area that's bothering you. Maybe something's painful, maybe a peripheral neuropathy in your foot feels like it's falling asleep. So you could use that pad on the foot 2 or 3 times a day. You'll improve circulation, help restore and regenerate some of the nerves and the tissue, and before you know it, those symptoms also disappear. So PEMF is a really critical stage 1 alkalizing, blood flow restoring modality that is miraculous. And like I said, if you walk around barefoot all day long, every day, you're getting your dose. Nobody walks around barefoot all day, every day. It's not practical and it's not feasible. And in some places, it's just too darn cold. So if after PEMF therapy, the red blood cells separate because they're charged now, negatively charged, that opens the window of opportunity for oxygen. So we exercise with oxygen, and we will see more oxygen being pushed into red blood cells because you're exercising, you're getting your heart rate up. Oxygen goes into the red blood cell through pressure and attaching to hemoglobin, which is a little sticky. And we'll talk about how we can affect the adhesion of oxygen, right? How sticky, how can we make the red blood cell more sticky so we can get more oxygen? Yes, we can. We'll talk about that. But after PEMF, it's the perfect window of opportunity to exercise with oxygen because all those red blood cells have separated, the blood is flowing again, and now oxygen can get into every cell, and now every cell can carry the oxygen to tissues and organs. So exercising for 15 minutes, and every 3 minutes you sprint for about 30 seconds, just above 120 beats per minute. You don't need to be a super athlete to do this at all. In fact, most of the time you're riding at a very comfortable pace, but again, every 2 or 3 minutes you're going to pedal a little bit faster for about 30 seconds just to get the pressure in the lungs and the arteries up, so we force more oxygen into more blood cells. Then we drop right into the light bed, and light will actually force that oxygen into certain cells, and it will actually cause the red blood cells to have a greater adhesion, so more oxygen attaches. So here's what the PEMF mat looks like. You just lay on that for 10, 20, or 30 minutes. You're alkaline, blood flow goes back to normal. That alone, just this one therapy alone, can again restore order body-wide. You can bring up just about any condition to me, and we can root it back to poor blood flow. If we can restore blood flow to the 11 organ systems, to all 60,000 miles of the circulatory system, does the body have a good chance of now healing and restoring order? The answer is yes. So just this one modality here on a daily basis is equivalent to you walking around barefoot or earthing/grounding every single day, like you were intended to. We were all born butt naked, intended to walk around barefoot and not be wearing clothing and be housed in a building blocking crucial wavelengths of light, breathing crucial quality, rich oxygen, walking around barefoot. In other words, a caveman had it best, period. So when we talked about PEMF, this is an example of what somebody's red blood cells look like when they're not doing well. This is called cell clumping or rouleau. You never want your cells to look like that under a microscope. This is like cars on the freeway magnetized to each other. And if a car tries to go on the off-ramp or take an exit, how is that car connected to 90 other cars or 200 other cars? How is that car going to exit and go down a one car wide road when he's got 100 other cars connected to him? It's not possible. It's called a freeway traffic jam. Freeway traffic jam in the body is also high blood pressure, because all those cells are blocking all the cells behind them from moving, and it puts pressure on the artery wall. The moment you do PEMF therapy, all those cells go back to their normal size and they repel each other. Think about them as, at first they were a box of raisins all clumping together, and now they're a bunch of hard-boiled eggs out of the shell, slithering around in olive oil. It's a thing of beauty. This is the way your blood looked when you were born. So we want to get to this point and we want to stay there every day. And that's what PEMF therapy does, or walking around barefoot all day long. Who can do that? Again, one 10-minute session in the morning, one 10-minute session at night will have the effect of you grounding 24/7. So then we'll do the oxygen therapy, exercising with oxygen. Again, for 15 minutes, you're wearing a mask. And there's a bag behind there that's filled up with 90+% oxygen. And we're breathing in through the mask and exhaling CO2 into the room. You don't breathe into that hose. You don't contaminate the hose. You don't contaminate the bag. So you're pulling rich oxygen as you breathe. Your arteries and your lungs pressure goes up, and you're forcing more oxygen into more red blood cells, as well as forcing oxygen across the artery wall. And microvessels, when they're narrowing, is as early as 40 years old, microvessels begin to narrow from inflammation as well as from what's called coronary artery disease. But if they're narrowing like this, right, the moment you get off of an oxygen therapy session, the microvessels get restored back to their normal diameter. Because when oxygen crosses the artery wall and kisses the endothelial lining, or the cells called the endothelial cells in that artery, a miraculous restoration of restored diameter occurs, kind of like roto-rooter plumbing in the house. Same thing in the body. So you're restoring flow of blood, you're pushing more oxygen into more red blood cells. The older we get, our pressure drops, meaning fewer molecules that we get into red blood cells. So when you exercise with oxygen, you're loading the red blood cell, you're maximizing the saturation of the cells, and then you're also restoring the tunnels that carry that blood. And you don't have to get your heart rate up too high, 100 to 110 beats per minute for 30 seconds every 2 or 3 minutes is all that's necessary. Your target is to do that 4 times over 15 minutes. Doesn't matter if you do 4 sprints your first time, that's not important. What's important is that you get to that point eventually, that you ramp up. Your first few sessions might be just riding the bike with a mask on and maybe pedaling at a comfortable pace for 10 minutes. Maybe you can't do any sprints, but every week or two, you might try one sprint. And if you're doing PEMF, oxygen and light, your energy and your range of motion and your pain reduction will allow you eventually to do these sprints if you can't quite do them in the beginning. So you will progress as you use this protocol to do things that you were able to do years ago. You cannot expect to take 10, 20, 30 years of damaging the body and aging and fix it in one session. What we're doing is we're repairing and restoring using these technologies, and we're kind of getting the cobwebs out of the way, and we're kicking away the free radicals, and we're getting rid of the bad guys, and we're reducing the inflammation and restoring blood flow so the body can start to repair. I like to call them the contractors in there getting back to work, but it's your responsibility to give those contractors good building materials, meaning quality whole foods. So after oxygen, we jump into light. Now, people might look at that and say, so what? You know, I'm exposed to light all the time. I don't see any health benefits. You're exposed to the wrong light. You're exposed to UV. You're exposed to incandescent. You're exposed to the bright lights in a room. They have actually a negative effect on the body. In these light beds, you have what's called red and near infrared light. Well, what is that? Red is the visible that you see here in the photo, and near infrared is the invisible that goes deeper. Red is very superficial, so whenever you see a device that's predominantly red, that means it's really only good for the skin. when the device is predominantly near infrared, like this bed, it's 75% near infrared. That means we pass the skin and hit tissue, organs, and muscle. There's 25% of the bed using red light for the skin. But what happens is when light hits a mitochondrial cell, it's a fancy way of calling a cell that's in tissue, muscle, and organ, as well as skin. When light hits that kind of cell, it gets absorbed. And during that absorption, there's a guy in there called mitochondrial nitric oxide. It's a thief. It gets kicked out. And when that guy gets kicked out, now oxygen can come back into that cell and dock and make ATP. Remember? Energy, adenosine triphosphate. That cell now lives another day. Cells make up tissues, tissues make up organs, organs make up you. Well, that means the skin isn't aging. That means the muscle isn't aging. It means tissue isn't aging, because if we can kick the free radicals out at the cellular level so oxygen can come back in, that cell is optimally making energy again. That means there's no dysfunction in the cell. If a cell is dysfunctional and it can't make energy using the food we eat and the oxygen that we breathe, that cell goes rogue and goes from Luke Skywalker to, you probably all said it, Darth Vader. And that cell is now a cancer cell. So when a cell can't make energy and the doors are blocked for oxygen to come in because there's too many free radicals hammering that cell goes into a different mode. It switches over into a cell that now can survive on glutamine and glucose. This is a dysregulating cell that is dividing rapidly and is attacking you. So this process of being attacked by free radicals is called ROS, reactive oxygen species, or oxidation, or oxidative stress. In other words, that's what causes a good cell to become a bad cell. How do you stop reactive oxygen species? How do you get the bad guys, the thieves, out of the house? Right? Think about this for a second. If the thieves go into your house at night, you're out to dinner, the house is pitch black, thieves go in, boom, the floodlights go on. These guys are blinded by the light, they go running out, and because they're blinded, they go running and they don't know where the heck they're going, but they ran into the fence. In the body, that's a good thing because the fence is the artery. And mitochondrial nitric oxide, even though it's a free radical, helps relax that artery and improves blood flow. So we're taking the thief out of the house, reusing them in a beneficial way, but now the house is clear for oxygen to come in and make ATP, happily ever after. And so that cell can't become a cancer cell. So to stop reactive oxygen species, which is the culprit for almost all degenerative breakdown, what do you need? Light, red and near infrared light. There's over 500 randomized controlled trials, the gold standard of clinical studies, proving how effective light is at the cellular level. You could look up skin tightening or collagen production or fibrin, elastin, and the word PBM, the acronym PBM, photobiomodulation. You can look that up on Google and you'll end up in PubMed with a study. You can type in PBM strength, PBM recovery, PBM delayed onset muscle soreness, okay? PBM traumatic brain injury, PBM macular degeneration. Look up any condition and then the words PBM, those letters right after it, and you're going to see a study backing up the effects and the efficacy of light. So light in itself is miraculous. You are more like a plant than you can possibly imagine. We have a receptor site in the body to absorb that. It's called cytochrome C oxidase. When cytochrome C oxidase absorbs a photon or light, it lets go of this free radical called mitochondrial nitric oxide. It, in my opinion, it's probably one of the most important discoveries. And If we walked around Mother Earth half naked, especially early in the morning where the UV index is much lower, we're getting the red, we're getting the near infrared with very little UV. We're getting it at about a fifth of the power of the light bed, but we were getting it. And one of the biggest hurdles of getting light into the body is this, the skin. How do you get through the skin? What if we could make the skin transparent? Because light is deflected, it's reflected, it scatters. The skin is a very almost horny looking, like the moon, right? All these ups and downs in the world of skin. It's called the stratum corneum, and they actually call it the horny surface. So in order to get light through the skin, we have to overcome that barrier with power. We have to overcome that barrier with near infrared, invisible wavelengths, meaning wavelengths in the four-figure range, right? Red is 635 nanometer. That's a fancy way of saying the wavelength at 635 is red. If anyone ever says to you, you know, the wavelength is 635, well, you know that color is red. Same with the Christmas tree light. If you see a red light, that wavelength is 635 nanometer. But once we go into the 800s, 900s, 1000, that wavelength is invisible. You can't see it. But that's the deeper penetrating wavelength. And so, you know, these beds are very costly because there's 45,000 of these LED diodes. We're creating a tremendous amount of energy to go into the body. We have to use a 220 volt, 30 amp, doesn't exist in a house, outlet to drive that kind of power and light into the body. But again, the big barrier to entry is the skin. So imagine if we could make the skin transparent for 20 minutes. How much light could you get? 2, 3, 400% more. So Davinci has figured out how to do that, and it's called deep light infusion. And you would talk to your practitioner, whoever you're doing Superhuman Protocol with, about that and how to get 2 to 3 times more light into the body in the same time frame. Again, deep light infusion, they'll discuss that with you in detail. So if we really look at the light bed itself, you know, there's a lot to be said about a company that makes a light bed that has been making FDA cleared class 4 medical lasers. The light bed is made by Aspen Lasers, and they've been in the industry a long time, been providing these lasers to medical doctors, to chiropractors. There's thousands of them installed worldwide, and that's what started all of this. Every chiropractor that has one of these has always said, can't we use this same technology that we can use to heal bones and skin and medial epicondylitis bilateral and, you know, L5 bulge pain, you name it, a laser was the way to reduce pain, encourage a rapid healing response, and get that person back out there. And so, of course, the manufacturers listened. And from all of the feedback on the laser world, they decided to make a light bed. Now, the light beds aren't as powerful as the lasers. They can't be. Otherwise, they'd be very dangerous for your eyes. These are what we call non-coherent light. Light beds use non-coherent light, meaning you can keep your eyes open while you're in it. It's very healthy to do that. Lasers are coherent, right? It's a straight focused beam, and this is why the patient and the doctor uses goggles that are coated specially to prevent that light from entering the eye, because it can be dangerous. So the world of light beds came from a very well adopted, credible technology called class 3B or class 4 laser. And most of the studies on the market are out there representing the devices on the market are from lasers, because we can control the power, we can control the distance from the diode head and the tissue. And so that's where you see all the studies. So let's talk a little bit about what you can expect to see when doing Superhuman Protocol in terms of your life. So I always tell people, write down a list of all your problems, put them on a piece of paper, put it in an envelope, and 90 days later, take out that piece of paper and look at it. Most of the things you wrote down, you're going to forget you even had a problem with, because they're all going to melt away slowly but surely, and you're going to forget, right? Out of sight, out of mind. You don't feel it, you don't remember it, but you'll be shocked at how well the body basically goes after everything going on with you and can start healing it. You can't look at the technology and say, well, is it good for this? Is it good for that? Can the body heal that naturally? If the answer is yes, then all Superhuman is doing is it's speeding up the actual process, the natural process that your body already has built into it. Your healing process is slowing down because of poor blood flow, because of inflammation, because of toxicity, or a number of things. Well, how do you speed that up? Well, get the blood flowing again, get the bad guys, the free radicals that are aging you, out of the way, get more oxygen into more cells so that it can be carried to more of the 11 organ systems and tissue. So we're kind of sending the contractors in again to work on the house. They're restoring, they're rebuilding. You've got to give them the best building materials, quality foods, quality water. Meditation's important because that helps reduce stress hormones. You can literally think yourself into pathology. There's a great book on that called Biology of Belief by Bruce Lipton. I recommend anybody that wants to know more about the power of thought and the effect on the body, look into that. It's not what this presentation is about, but these are important things to think about. If you're going to buy $1 million horse, you're not going to feed it Snickers. Well, you're far more valuable than a $100,000 or $1 million thoroughbred. I hope you think so. I hope you think that. So Superhuman isn't just some exogenous external technology that we're claiming is going to be the end-all be-all. It is the very essence of life. If I remove those three elements or those three things from the universe, you're dead. Whether you like it or not, you can't survive without any one of these three. It's impossible. Dr. Jane Hunt already did the study on magnetism, okay? When they were putting astronauts in a Faraday cage blocking all magnetic fields, they began to go into defib. This is why every spacecraft has a pulse generator on board. Again, 5 minutes without oxygen, you'll pass out. Within 10, you're brain dead. I don't need to talk about light. If the sun winks out of the sky tomorrow, we're all in trouble. So what we're doing is we're taking these three aspects of the universe, Mother Earth in this particular case, because you can't get these in the universe everywhere. But let's just say for edification that you could get all three of these in magnitude order, in the right order, you would restore order, right? Like a fish out of water. A fish cannot survive in water. It was born in water. It thrived in water. It probably dies of natural causes in water, unless it's eaten by an apex predator. Okay, well, the apex predator here on Earth, they're gone. Okay, dinosaurs had their day. We're not going to get eaten by a dinosaur. The apex predator now is yourself. What are you feeding yourself? How are you thinking? What are you doing every day to stay active? Well, I can't control all of those, but if you're doing Superhuman Protocol, we can control a lot. The body can get back to work and restore order. So if you're a professional athlete and you want to beat your personal best, train with Superhuman Protocol. You'll be able to lift more weights. You'll be able to get through the workout with greater strength and endurance. You're going to recover faster. You're going to see a 25% increase in muscle synthesis. Look that up. PBM muscle synthesis. You're going to see a 67% decrease in delayed onset muscle soreness. Look that up. PBM DOMS, DOMS. The studies are there. If you want your skin to look a lot better, right? To fine lines and wrinkles to disappear. You need to improve collagen production, fibrin, elastin. How do you do that? Light therapy, PEMF therapy, improvement in blood flow, reduction of free radicals and reactive oxygen species at the cellular level will improve your skin. Why do you think they make all these face masks and handheld devices for the face? They work. The studies are out there. There's FDA clearances on this. You can't even get an FDA clearance unless you can prove something works. So if you want to look better, Superhuman Protocol will certainly help you achieve that. If you want to feel better, protocol will help you achieve that. If you want to perform better, Superhuman will help you achieve that. Again, we're accelerating what the body does naturally. If you were able to get PEMF by walking around barefoot, quality oxygen, walking around in an environment where there is no industry, there are no pollutants, and you're able to get the first light, the first few hours of the morning and the end of the day, you're doing poor man's Superhuman Protocol. You would be able to level up your health. What we're doing is we're taking the best of those, allowing you to do it in magnitude order, meaning in greater power, greater density, light, oxygen, more molecules, PEMF, more frequencies to talk to more cells and cell groups and cell types to get the cellular orchestra back on track. So it's huge. You really can't ask me, does it work for this? The answer is, can the body help restore that? Do you believe that you should be getting better? Do you believe that the body should be healing that? Was it there before? Was that condition there before? If the answer is no, the condition wasn't there before. That means the body was preventing it from happening. The body was actually treating you automatically, but something happened where it couldn't do that anymore, and it fell short. Again, poor blood flow. You didn't have good alkalinity, and you're being hammered by free radicals, toxins. So let's talk a little bit about the protocol itself. Best way to do this for somebody that's in normal condition, you're going to do 10 minutes on the PEMF mat. You're going to use a program called Vitality. You're going to use intensity 7. And you're going to do that for 10, 20, or 30 minutes. If you've got 30 minutes to do it, do the full 30 minutes. Well, let's dig into this a little bit. To put PEMF into a level that is much, much more effective, you want to make sure you have a good electrolyte balance. Sodium, potassium, magnesium, and calcium. Those 4 electrolytes help the cell voltage go up. It actually helps PEMF therapy work. If I were to rob you of sodium, potassium, magnesium, and calcium, actually you'd be dead. But let's just say we created a major deficiency. You'd have muscle cramps, you'd be itching from head to toe, you wouldn't be able to see clearly, you'd have zero energy, you'd be very lethargic. Well, PEMF therapy won't even work. So if you're getting a good quality electrolyte balance, again, sodium, potassium, magnesium, and calcium into the body, PEMF is going to be optimized. You're going to get optimal outcomes. So not a good idea to wear any electronic devices while you're on this. You want this to be sort of a sanctuary. PEMF, this particular device, creates a field around you that actually blocks dirty EMFs. And the higher your negative charge, the better a force field you create walking around. And dirty EMFs like 5G, Wi-Fi, etc., if you're EMF sensitive, they bounce off you a lot easier. In fact, when you're walking around barefoot, you are creating an invisible force field that is actually keeping you from receiving and being EMF sensitive, believe it or not. So the more often you do the PEMF therapy, the better the electrolyte balance that you take or electrolytes that you take, the more effective the charge, the less sensitive you will be to negative EMFs. In fact, when we measure our device. When we turn it on, we're at 0 dirty EMFs. Unlike almost all other devices on the market, they have a patent on this one for anti-EMF. So that's why they call it the pure wave. It blocks the dirty stuff so that the waveform coming through is pure. That's why it's called pure wave. Technology's been around a long time. It originated in Liechtenstein, and it was the original PMF therapy introduced by Dr. Oz on his show a long, long time ago. And many of the doctors that started talking about PMF in the early days were actually talking about this exact device. So we chose this to be the number one, stage 1 in Superhuman Protocol because it has patents on the effect in the body, ion transport, O2 uptake. In fact, with a 10-minute session on this alone, your potential for oxygen transport or ion transport is 9 times, meaning you might be able to get 9 times more oxygen into your cells than before. You're not getting 9 times more oxygen into the lungs. That's not possible. What you're getting is when you cell separate, you're getting 9 times more oxygen into those red blood cells because they're not stuck to each other anymore. Somebody might only get 2 times more oxygen into the cells because their alkalinity is almost normal and their blood cell separation isn't horrible. So in worst case scenarios, we have a really very large effect at the cellular level. So again, 10 minutes on this, minimum. 20 or 30 is preferred if you can do that. Then we do exercise with oxygen. Now, again, this is not about, oh, let's tank down 900 liters of oxygen. Got to finish the whole bag. Got to have 90% purity. It's actually, none of that's important. What's important is that we do at least 4, our target is 4 sprints for 30 seconds over 110 beats per minute over a period of 15 minutes. You only need 45% pure oxygen. All the oxygen generators on the market make 90+%. So that's why you hear that there's 90% oxygen in here. It's not necessary. It's a little overkill. So bottom line is you're getting filtered, HEPA filtered oxygen that's cleaner than the room air. You're breathing oxygen in from this hose. You exhale this CO2 into the room. And with this protocol, if you cannot do exercise with oxygen, you can skip that step and go straight to the light bed. If you don't have exercise with oxygen and you have only hyperbaric, you could do hyperbaric oxygen for a short period of time until you feel like you can get on a bike and do exercise with oxygen. The mask, you should have your own mask. You don't share masks. Each mask should be cleaned by the user. You can't reinfect yourself with a dirty mask. You've already built up the antibodies for that. So don't worry about that. But every time you're done using it, rinse it with warm soapy water. We do have a device where you can drop your mask into a system, and in 180 seconds, it's 99.9% sanitized. So almost sterile. So then you would do light next. Now, with light, you want to be butt naked. You need light to go through the skin. And so wearing clothes doesn't make any sense whatsoever. If you have to and you don't feel comfortable going into bed naked, wear as little clothing as possible, and bathing suit, whatever. You should be naked. A 15-minute session in a bed like this, because it's the big, powerful bed, is more than enough. And in the beginning, you should be doing it on a daily basis. The goal is to be doing Superhuman every single day. Every single day, the contractors are showing up to work and they're helping repair and restore. If the contractors only came in once a week to work on the house, how long is it going to take for the house to get fixed? Okay, if they only came in once a month, they're really not getting anywhere. In fact, some of the work that they're doing in between their big breaks is probably eroding and breaking down because of weather, especially if the roof is off. So you got to look at this like building a house. The faster you want your house built, the more often you should have the contractors there. Get into the light bed every single day. If you're in it every day, you can do a 10 to 15 minute session. If you can only show up 2 or 3 times a week, You want the maximum 20-minute session. And so light doesn't have any real serious contraindications except for somebody who might have epilepsy. If you're going to run a really low frequency, and we'll get into that in a second, 10, 20 hertz, which there would be absolutely no reason to do that. The flickering is visible, and that could induce a seizure. So we've never, ever seen it happen. There's never been a report of it that we're aware of, but it can happen. So just be aware that there are 4 main programs: immunity, pain, recovery, and sleep. Those are the 4 you should look at. Those 4 programs, the only way they differ is the frequency, hertz. Hertz represents pulses per second. Let's say you have one frequency at 528 hertz. That might be the immunity frequency. And all that means is it's that particular issue might accelerate in its outcome with that frequency. But light, no matter what frequency you're using, is always doing things, always doing the same thing at the cellular level, kicking the bad guy out so oxygen can come in and make ATP. It doesn't matter what frequency you're using, that's always going to happen. But if you're having a sleep issue or you want to increase your performance, you could use a particular program with a specific frequency that may have a greater effect on that outcome. These are experimental and in my opinion, fairly anecdotal, but they are there for clinicians to experiment with. And there's no way you can cause any harm or problems by changing the frequency. Most light beds, you don't know what the frequency is. It's locked and loaded at one frequency. We allow you to create your own programs, define your own frequencies, but we also have default go-to programs that work for pretty much everybody. Primarily, I would use the frequency 528 hertz. That's a good go-to setting. 90% irradiance, meaning 90% of the power on pretty much everybody. If you had to stick with one program, that is an excellent program to start off with. So, the bed itself, keeping it clean, just wipe it down with something that won't affect the acrylic, a non-ammonia based cleaner, Lysol without ammonia. There's all sorts of tanning bed cleaners out there that also work as long as, I said, there's no ammonia in it, because you don't want the acrylic to fog up or start to break down and become hazy. Then you affect the transmission of light. So going back to stage 1, magnetism, there's a few FAQs that I want to go over here, and some of them being, can I, wear my watch or play with my cell phone? I think I mentioned earlier, get all the electronics out of the way because they can impede the movement of those frequencies and that waveform. So just take everything off and get on that device. Can put it on the bed. We can program it to go on at night and go on any program for 10, 20, or 30 minutes, or you can have it turn on in the morning as well. So if you end up buying one for your house through your clinician, you can set that up. So when you wake up, you've had an hour of PEMF and you've done 2 programs. One program is the tranquility mode at night to help you go to sleep, and the superhuman signal first thing in the morning. So now you can just jump into oxygen and then light. So if you're EMF sensitive, no, this won't have any effect on you. These are not dirty EMFs. These are, we're using a magnetic field at half a Gauss, carrying tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of different frequencies to talk to different receptors, cell groups, and cell types to help the body go back into what's called coherence. In other words, for clinicians, homeostasis is actually achieved when you're doing this therapy often. Some other questions that come up are, what's the difference between high power and low power? Sometimes I go to a clinic and they're talking about 2 Tesla, 3 Tesla. 2 Tesla is 20,000 Gauss, 3 Tesla is 30,000 Gauss. These are way too powerful to affect the entire body's blood flow and get cells back on track. So cells have receptors. They can listen to certain music, and certain music can cause that cell to do things that they shouldn't be doing. When you're looking at a PEMF device like this, when it's low power and thousands of different frequencies happening simultaneously, it's like a symphony talking to all the different cell groups and cell types, and they all go back into alignment like a flock of birds. High power can't do that. They cannot run more than one frequency. And what that frequency is the pulse, the hammer, right? So if it's hitting you hard like this with 20,000 Gauss, it can only hit you every second or two with that. So it's all brain, all brawn and no brains. High power is all brawn and no brains. It cannot send in 20, 30, 100,000 different frequencies simultaneously. It can only charge, then discharge. That's the pulse. So the higher the power, the lower the pulse frequency, like this. If you lower the power on a high power device, really low to, let's say, 1,000 Gauss, it could go pop, 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 pop. But if you crank it all the way up, it's got to charge, then discharge. So it's just boom, boom. This is great for really big knee injuries, really deep pain, deep injuries, damaged tissue, damaged bones. And when you can point to a problem that's really severe, you cannot move that limb or that part of the body, of no range of motion. We have to somehow figure out how to contract and relax everything in that area to encourage blood flow to induce a healing response. Low power device like in the Superhuman Protocol, not intended to do that, and it can't do it. High power intended to do it and can do it. They do not compete with each other. So if someone says, well, I have a 10,000 Gauss PEMF, it blows away this one. No, it doesn't. That's like saying a jeweler's screwdriver is better than a drill. There's zero comparison between the two of them. They're two totally different tools for two totally different jobs. Just because they carry the same acronym, PEMF, it just means they both have a pulsed electromagnetic field coming out, but the way in which they do that separates them completely. And when I hear these guys talking about we're better because we're more powerful, no, you're not. You're different. You're different. The Lamborghini is not a better car than a Bentley because it's 4 times the horsepower. Bentley is a beautiful luxury car with incredible build quality, smooth and super quiet. The Lambo is a very obnoxious, loud, not comfortable driving show-off sports car. I happen to love Lambos, but that's the fact. So understand the significance and the disparity between the two. So if I have frozen shoulder and I'm in the gym working out, I'm going to go for high power because I really need a fast healing response here. I need to get blood flowing. I need this to come back to normal quick. I'm not going to use the low power device. Not at all. So there's an application for everything. So oxygen, some of the questions might be somebody has COPD with CO2 retention. You definitely don't want to be using that. So if you have COPD, talk to your pulmonologist about this. There shouldn't be any other contraindications. Some people might feel like they're not getting enough oxygen while they're first working out. That's called a rally, and that will typically go away within a minute or two. Just slow down, relax, and push through it. Usually you'll see that go away within a minute or two. Again, it's not all about breathing all the oxygen and emptying the bag. It's about doing 3 to 4 sprints over a period of 15 minutes. And again, that's your target. That's your goal. That's what you want to get to. Okay. If it takes you a month before you can do 4 sprints, so be it. That's fantastic. That means you improved. That means you got to your goal. You don't need to be a rock star and do the full protocol on the oxygen side immediately. This is something you're going to work up to. And I hope that makes sense. So questions about light, can you do light if you have cancer? Can you do light if you're pregnant? So you shouldn't be doing any of these things if you're pregnant. We do not want to experiment with a fetus. So answer is no. I can't tell anyone what to do if they've got it in their own home, but we always tell people that we don't do studies on pregnant women, so that's the end of that. If you have cancer, it's your choice to do this. Our light bed instructions for you say if you have any cancerous lesions exposed, obviously, wait till they heal up before you do any kind of red light therapy. You can Google the effects of PBM on cancer and come to your own conclusions. There are some studies out there that are extremely positive, and there are some studies out there that make you wonder, but those were done on rats and they're extremely old and they have never been reproduced, and the studies have pretty much died off. There hasn't been a single citation after that one negative study that might be out there. I don't even know if it's still available online. Light, going back to photosensitive medication. If you're on photosensitive medication, it's usually not a problem, but because there's no UV involved, the contraindication on photosensitive medicine is based on UV, ultraviolet light, not red and near infrared. But it's best to wait till you're off that medication to do light therapy. If you're okay to go outside barefoot, half naked, and breathe oxygen, you can do Superhuman Protocol. PEMF when it comes to pacemakers. So it's less powerful than Mother Earth, the pacemaker, sorry, the PEMF device. So if you're allowed to walk around barefoot, there should be no issue with you using PEMF, but you got to talk to your cardiologist and say, I use a pulsed electromagnetic field device that operates at about 45 microtesla, or what's also known as half a Gauss. If you tell that to him, he may not understand that. He may understand it, but get a clearance before you do it. We have never seen a problem. But if you have a pacemaker, you got to double check, get his or her approval to do that. Some of the things you might experience in the beginning with PEMF therapy is feels like needles, pins, and itching throughout the scalp and the trunk from the waist up. That's the capillaries stretching and opening because of the increased blood flow. That happens with deconditioned individuals. Don't worry about it. It's a good thing. It's also evidence that the device and the protocol is working. Sometimes someone says, I'm like really itchy. I had to stop. And every time I do it, it's really itchy. I just said, well, do you work out often? No. Are you overweight? Yeah. Okay. It's the device and it's blood flow. You're not used to that. Get used to it. It's going to go away. When you don't work out for a period of time and you go into the gym, you're going to feel that blood flow. It'll go away. It'll eventually go away permanently if you continue to work out. I'm in the gym 6 days a week. I never feel that. I mean, I could stop working out for 2 weeks and I go back in and I don't feel it. So this is for sedentary individuals. Doing my best to come up with some more questions here on the fly. Let's go through PEMF again. So doesn't there's some very just be aware that you could detox in this protocol because suddenly, the doors are wide open, blood's flowing really, really well, and processes, things that are normally happening in the body, again, we accelerate. You may feel a little lethargic. Maybe you feel like you have the flu, and maybe you were feeling so good the first time you decided to do Superhuman like twice a day. I don't know how you could do that at a clinic, but let's just say you figured out how to do that, or you had the time. Too much of a good thing can work in the opposite direction. More isn't better. Better is better. Do it daily. Don't need to do it twice a day. If you do feel like there's a detox reaction, you feel lethargic, you feel like you're getting the cold or the flu, stay well hydrated, half your weight in ounces of water. If you weigh 200 pounds, that means you should be drinking 100 ounces. If you weigh 300 pounds, you should be drinking 150 ounces of water in a day. Stay well hydrated. Make sure you've got a good electrolyte balance, like I said. That helps with the PEMF. At the risk of sounding repetitive, I'm going to do my best here to wrap up. So once again, PEMF restores blood flow, separates those cells, creates the best window of opportunity for exercise with oxygen. You oxygenate and you breathe oxygen for 15 minutes. You do these 30-second sprints for about 30 seconds at a time. That's your target, meaning you want to work up to that. Just listen to your body. There's no right or wrong way of doing oxygen therapy in the beginning, especially if you're trying to get to your target. If you just want to exercise for 10 minutes with just the oxygen and you just want to go at a above average pace, that's fine. But know that your target is eventually 4 30-second sprints at your best heart rate, your highest heart rate. And you always should subtract 220 minus your age. That would be your max heart rate zone. You don't need to go over 130, but if you're, exercising, you always want to be aware of what your max heart rate is. Always get an approval from your cardiologist as well to exercise like that. If you've got a heart issue, if you have AFib, or if you have a mitral valve prolapse, which is a leaky mitral valve, you may have poor blood flow there, although they'll recommend you do exercise and stay active, even with a valve like that. But do it if you're very concerned about a heart condition you have, talk to your doctor about doing exercise with oxygen. And then we drop into light. And light, I don't know if I mentioned this, but we started with light and worked our way back. We thought, okay, my gosh, light is amazing. Light has some of the most profound effects on the body. I mean, all of them do. Everybody asks me, what's your favorite? And I said, well, I don't know. I mean, do I want a magnetic field to disappear, oxygen or light? Which one? I can't pick because either one will kill us. So I love them all, but light was fascinating to me by way of the incredibly rich research and applications to different conditions. It was unbelievable. But I set out to put light in another level, and accelerate what light does. And I realized that if we could alkalize the blood, separate the red blood cells, and supersaturate the plasma, which carries red blood cells, then we could make light way more effective. And we did. And one thing I didn't mention, when light hits a red blood cell, which we never talked about, we talked about the other cell where we kick out the bad guy and oxygen can come in and make energy again. But when light hits a red blood cell, it increases the adhesion of hemoglobin, meaning that cell becomes more, the hemoglobin proteins in the cell, their adhesion goes up so that oxygen can dock on it even better. It's incredible. So the three together, this is a synergy, right? This is a magic trio. There's, again, I don't know what condition the body can't restore on its own. Superhuman speeds that up. If we were to look at your aging wheel, if we were to open you up and look at your aging wheel, some people have an aging wheel going 100 miles an hour. Some people, maybe it's 50 miles an hour towards, the end of the day, the end of their days. We want to do our best to stop that aging wheel, right? Well, light alone puts the brakes on that. And, it's hard to quantify what that is, but I would like to say that we're probably putting the brakes on at the cellular level at about 70% of your 100 miles an hour, meaning you're going down to 30 miles an hour. Would you rather go 30 miles an hour to your final day, or would you rather go 100? I'd rather go by, half a mile. So I can. If I do PEMF, oxygen, and light, I stay away from really toxic foods and sugar and burning carbohydrates, meaning, browning things that have sugar in them. I can probably get that down to 5 miles an hour. So the technology is putting the big brakes on the aging, and it will show. I'm 54 right now. And by the way, if you look at my interview with Ed Milet back in 2019, November of 2019, the cardiologist, I had a mitral valve defect, born with it. And they said, you won't make it to Christmas. They said, you're going to die within the next 3 months if you don't get the surgery. and I did not look good either. I believe I look a lot younger than now than I did, was it almost 4 years ago? So over 4 years ago, I was doing Superhuman Protocol. I finally got the surgery, and if it wasn't for Superhuman, could have been in some really big trouble. I did a PNOE test, which is a device that actually can test 23 biomarkers, including my biological age, and I'm currently at age 54 biologically, even though I'm 54. I'm sorry, biological age is 45. I'm currently 54. So I'm now doing a special protocol with Superhuman and a frequency of it, which is every day. And my target is to get to a biological age of 30. So I will be reporting back in 90 days. You'll be able to see a video of me in 90 days. And I will show my test results before and after. In fact, I get tested next week, second test. And then I will be doing a test every month for the next 3 months. So we'll see how Superhuman is treating me. Okay, everybody. Thank you for your time and attention, and I hope this helped.